Hey Armory, I'm so glad you're here on a Sunday morning. I'm not there with you in person. I'm teaching at the South Campus in the main sanctuary today, which gives us an excellent test run for how this would go when I won't be there for Sundays, that I'll actually be at the South Campus Junior High, which hopefully we're going to be able to start that up in about a month or so. So we're going to see how these things go. Just be patient with us as we learn, especially as I navigate how to best utilize the video portion of this to recap what we've learned midweek. And so let's do that. So at youth group, we spent our time summarizing the book of Isaiah. We're at the point in the Kings, specifically the Kings of Judah, where Isaiah shows up on the scene and prophesies through 4 or maybe even 5 of the kings of Judah. And one of the stories of these kings is found actually not only just in 2 Kings, but also here in the book of Isaiah. So we camped in Isaiah this week because there's so much great stuff to look at in this wonderful, wonderful book. So the book starts out with God addressing his rebellious children, whom he later goes ahead and calls stubborn, Judah and Israel, and how even then he was willing to relent of the disasters he pronounced would come upon them if they would just turn and repent and be forgiven. Now Judah does this a few times, and God does relent of the disasters to come, but he also speaks about a coming judgment, like a fire that would consume and destroy Jerusalem. But this was never going to be the end result. Just like the rest of the prophets we've looked at, Isaiah constantly prophesies of a new Jerusalem or a new people who would listen to God and the coming Messiah that he was going to send. So it never just ends in depression, but much of Isaiah is prophetic words concerning the coming Messiah, the servant king, and there's a lot of imagery of Judah being, wiped off the map, so to speak. It says that he's cut down into a stump, that he'd be burned with fire, but it also talks about how that stump, specifically the stump of Jesse, would come out of it a shoot representing a person who would come to be the blessing to all the nations that was promised Abraham so long ago. So all of the imagery of fire and destruction leads to examples like this new shoot, a new life, a new work that God's going to do after the time of Jerusalem's destruction and exile to Babylon. And this imagery of fire and renewal or purification, it's seen no better than in Isaiah's call to the ministry in chapter 6, where he gets to peek behind the curtain, if you will, and see a glimpse of God and his throne room and the seraphim flying about calling, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with his glory. And then there's this moment where an angel takes one of the lumps of coal and touches Isaiah's mouth with it, his lips, not to destroy his mouth, but to cleanse it and make it ready to speak for God. He in doing so, he had forgiven Isaiah of his own sins. And so that's the story of Israel and God's people, that oftentimes he'll take us through fire. He will lead us through difficult, even damaging situations, never with the intention to destroy us, but to refine us or to purify us and make us ready for his work. So we looked at King Hezekiah, who was a pretty good king. He was surrounded by Assyria. The nation of Assyria was coming to fight against him, and there's some amazing trash talk by the leaders of Assyria to the Hebrew people. But Hezekiah sought the Lord what to do and for protection, and God won a great victory for them, protected them by fighting for them. And then Hezekiah, had this wonderful victory, and Jerusalem was spared for a time. But then Isaiah was told he was going to die from a sickness. And Hezekiah didn't like that word from the Lord, and so he prayed against it, that God would grant him mercy and more time. And so God gives Hezekiah 15 more years of his life. But after 2 of those years, he ends up fathering a son who would become the king after him, and that king, Manasseh, turned out to be the worst king in the history of the evil kings of Judah and Israel, doing more evil than even those who God had driven out of the land before the Hebrew people got there, which makes you wonder a lot of things, but also it makes you wonder what might have happened had Hezekiah agreed with God and trusted God, even with his own seemingly untimely death, instead of fighting against it. And then we looked at how much of the rest of Isaiah's prophecies, he talks about things all happening in the future, even past the events of Judah's exile and their return from Babylon, but dealing with a specific character called the Lord's chosen servant. So much of the prophecies, are about this character, and the prophecies parallel so well with the New Testament, with the Gospels and the stories about Jesus. It's incredible and wonderful and comforting to see God telling us of the coming hero who would establish a kingdom that would be different than all others, one that would be of no end, one who would bring about a comfort and a peace, and a fix, as you could say, to the ultimate problem of sin and death. So we're going to discuss some of this stuff in our groups today. Our theme is still knowing and sharing your gifts, and we have these overarching themes that we go over for a couple of months, and this one is the gifts. So sharing your gifts, knowing your gifts. We want you to know how God has gifted each one of us individually, and also how we can share and use those gifts in God's kingdom. So we're going to talk about that today. One gift in particular I think we'll spend time talking about today is the gift that's very much so on display, which is the gift of prophecy. And so I want to discuss that a little bit with you, and I want really my leaders to take it away and lead you on an epic adventure in your small group time. So God bless you, and I can't wait to see you on Wednesday.